To continue the conversation, we'd love to welcome a panel of experts who are going to talk to us about apprenticeships specifically in the state of North Carolina. So we will be welcoming back David again to the stage, along with John Loyack, the Vice President of Economic Development at the North Carolina Community College System, Dr. Felicia Brown, who is the Director of Human Resources in Wayne County Public Schools, and moderating the discussion will be our President and CEO of Best NC, Brenda Berg.
David, thank you for that. Those remarks were fantastic. I love that. You bring people together. How exciting is that? Much like we do here at the Innovation Lab. So thank you so much for being here. I'm going to take just a minute, a little bit, to frame, because I told you this morning you are going to be sick of 41% and vicious cycle. If you leave here with nothing else, we want you to leave with those things. So again, I'm going to revisit why we're here and why we're having this discussion about teacher apprenticeship. Is this challenge where we have 41% of our new teachers coming in without preparation, without student teaching, and 3/4 of those, so 30% of our new teachers are coming in on an emergency or a permit to teach, and half of those are not even making it past those license stage. So it's super important. And also, 26% of our first-year teachers are leaving regardless of their path of entry. So we have critical vacancies that need to be filled. And as you heard from Gab Barnes, we have a lot of people who want to teach, but there's a disconnect between people who want to teach, who haven't been properly prepared, who haven't had the proper experience, and how they get into the classroom. And throwing somebody in as the teacher of record, and we wonder why 47% leave, right? So again, that comes to that vicious cycle of having critical vacancies, filling with unprepared teachers, and eventually having even more critical vacancies. So that is what we're here today to discuss. Maureen, thank you for introducing our guests, having a perspective from a national perspective, having the state perspective. I know President Cox personally asked John Loyack to be with us, and we have the perspective from Wayne County as well. So I want to start off, sorry about this, my news, there we go. Oh, we'll go back. There we go. All right, so, sorry. So John, let's start with you. I asked you and I asked Dr. Cox to come because there are some really interesting perspectives, particularly in the nursing profession. And when we talk about advanced teaching roles, often teachers hear, well, nurses have career pathways, why shouldn't we? And I think it's so interesting that apprenticeship is really leading the way in nursing, and also the community college system is leading the way in sort of that path as well. Could you speak to those aspects for us?
Sure, absolutely, and thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. This is really an interesting time for us because I think traditionally when we think about apprenticeship, I think it's very easy for our minds to go to areas like the trades. We think about HVAC, we think about electric, we think about masonry work, and I'm really proud to say that some of those areas are areas that North Carolina has been developing workforce in using apprenticeship for years. But what's wonderful about this is there's been this wonderful evolution taking place. After all the trades, manufacturing really began to pick up on this and understood how important this was. And then it began to move into healthcare. And literally just over the last few years, you can see how these sparks are igniting all over the state and really beginning to pick up. And it starts very small. I mean, some of these programs, we have one of our apprenticeship programs, which is getting a lot of attention these days, is the Surrey Yadkin Works model. And that, when it started back in 2020, 2 apprentices. Today, they're registering hundreds of apprentices just a number of years later. We're going to do the same thing in education. We've got one of our stars here who we're starting now, we're starting low numbers. We'll be back in a few years and let you know how much this has expanded. But education, this is one of those areas where we've got to be successful. I think the university system for a long time has carried the weight of developing the teachers that we need in this state. And to be very clear with everybody here, this is one of those things that is a must-do on someone like Mai's list. Any any entity that's looking at North Carolina as a place to come and invest and create thousands of jobs will only do so if they think they have the workforce they need and if they have the teachers for those workers. And so this is the kind of thing that I think is a really important opportunity for us. I'm glad that we're here discussing this right now because this is critical.
Yeah, thank you so much. And there are two elements of that I want to sort of weigh in on. And one is, I understand in Surrey, they, in nursing, they won't take an unqualified nurse. Let's be honest, right? And so you have traveling nurses, and Surrey apparently has one traveling nurse left. That's it. They have been able to fill all of their vacancies because of apprenticeship. So that's the goal, right?
That's right.
The other part, is, if you can speak to it, is how someone, say, can come in as a TA, they could come into the community college system, they could then elevate to an apprenticeship position. How does that relate to some of the opportunities you have where you're pairing the community college system with the four-year system?
Well, I think there's one really very important point underlying this, and it's been mentioned here a few times. Number one, it's the age. This is not something that would be limited to any particular age window. The average age of an apprentice in the state of North Carolina and nationally is 41 years old. And so we're taking these folks and we're providing opportunities and seeing interest from a variety of different age groups. This could be somebody who is 50 plus, who has picked up credits, picked up certifications, but has been looking for that path into teaching. It could be somebody at the younger end. It could be somebody who has served in the military and has come out and now they're in their mid to late 20s and are ready to go to work. And so these folks are coming from a lot of different areas. So the one thing that I would encourage the folks in this room is to realize you can't limit it to one specific age window. Some of our apprenticeship programs we do see get limited to, say, an 18 to 25-year-old window. And so that's something that we have to be important to avoid. But in terms of how it's done, it's one of those things that I think in North Carolina, states have a variety of different ways of approaching apprenticeship. Each state essentially has the ability to decide how deeply they want to be involved. Here in North Carolina, we have been deeply involved for some time. And so the North Carolina Department of Labor certainly covered apprenticeship for a number of years. It moved to the Department of Commerce for a few years, but I like to think that it's really found its home now with the North Carolina Community College system. And so our Apprenticeship NC program is that one that is, as we speak, we've got boots on the ground who are meeting with businesses, meeting with hospitals, meeting with schools to make sure that they've got the workforce they need. I don't know that covered all of it.
That's great. I mean, there's so much more to come, and that's the beauty of these pilots that we're proposing is let's figure those out. Let's figure out all of the opportunities. Dr. Brown, you're figuring out the opportunities, right? You're doing this in Wayne County. So can you share with us sort of what's working, what's not working, and then let's have a little conversation about how do you're that early innovator, right? With the innovation adoption curve, you're that early innovator. How do we eventually get those laggards on board?
So I want to say first that in the beginning, it was a commitment from our local board of education and our former superintendent and our current superintendent, Dr. Wichard. They focused on we need to find a way to meet the needs of our students, number one, so that we can have the right student outcomes, and we've got to fill these vacancies to do it. During 2020, there was a time when we had the technology, excuse me, and students had that virtual learning took place, right? But then when we returned back to the classroom and some teachers left, we realized that the virtual learning was not enough, and so we had to start something soon. And it was the partnerships that we had with Wayne Community College, Apprenticeship NC, RTI, all those that came to the table with us and said, this is what we want to accomplish and this is how we're going to make this happen. If it had not been for that collaboration and partnerships, that wouldn't have happened because the district has a lot of responsibility. The human resources itself could not do it alone. It was those experts that said, this is what this needs to look like, and this is how you go about writing this. When you look at the on-the-job competencies that the teachers apprentices have to have. We looked at that together. We involved our curriculum and instruction team. We also looked at, okay, how many high school students do we currently have that may be interested? Well, we're not quite sure. We do have a teacher cadet program that just started, but how can we use that as a vehicle to get this message out? So we actually went to the high schools and talked to students during their lunchtime and said, hey, Do you want to be a teacher? Have you thought about being a teacher? Not really knowing what teacher apprenticeship was going to look like for us, but we knew we had to get started somewhere. And so we just, began having these early interest meetings with our teacher assistants, not just teacher assistants, but all classified staff. We said, hey, all those that will come, we want to know if you're interested. You may be in a cafeteria position, but guess what? If you have a love for students, and if you've ever thought about teaching and you have some college credit, this is a pathway for you. So we didn't want to block anyone from coming. And so with that said, many people did show interest. And with that interest, we narrowed it down to 8 people. And one of those persons was actually a high school student that actually came through high school and did the college career promise, had the 48 hours to be an instructional assistant in our district, and will graduate in May with her associate's degree. And she will, go on, and she's doing a fabulous job. And actually, 2 of those instructional assistants were actually teaching fellows. They got the teaching fellows scholarship as well. So it's just been an awesome experience for us, and everyone's excited about it. Our board, our local government's excited about what's happening.
That's great. Of those 8, what are the sort of the primary pipeline? You mentioned one high school student.
Yes. So, excuse me. With those 8, 6 of those are instructional assistants, and 1 is a long-term substitute teacher.
So they've all sort of had a contact with the classroom, but now you actually have a way to get them into the teaching. That's fantastic. When we think about those, and I'm going to get to you on this as well, is what do you think it would? I mean, you're in again that innovation place, right? But what do you think if we were to institutionalize this, operationalize it, and make this scale up within your district, scale across the state? What are the kind of the key factors for success that you think we need to put in place?
So number 1 would be funding, for sure. Expanding that so that more teachers, not just in the elementary pipeline, but our EC vacancies need to be addressed. Our math and science vacancies need to be addressed. Middle and high school, looking at those students early on, and we're looking at ways to do that. In the teacher apprenticeship, mentors are vital. I mean, just because you're going through the apprenticeship, getting classes, and we name it an apprenticeship, who is that person that is actually showing them the work? Who is answering their questions on a day-to-day basis? Who's exposing them to the very things that they're going to meet in the classroom? As we've said before, internship is not enough. It's only a couple of weeks. And by then, you're trying to actually impress your clinical teacher. You've got to pass me, give me a check, right? But in the teacher apprenticeship, you're actually learning by doing. And it's okay to learn. It's okay to make a mistake. So we have to train our mentors, scale up the professional development for those mentors. It's not the same as the beginning teacher mentor. A beginning teacher mentor is someone that's going to guide them while, first of all, you should have some experience, right, as a beginning teacher, but not always, because we have alternative licensed teachers in those positions. But they're not in a place where we can actually give them the feedback as a beginning teacher mentor. So it's not the same thing. There's an expectation that you need to grow, and we're going to help you grow through the evaluation tool, but with on-the-job training competencies and the evaluation tool that the mentor can support the apprentice in, that just expounds everything. We're talking about, the draft of teachers, right? We're starting early, and so those teachers are going to be those star teachers. The more support they get, the more exposure they have, the more they learn how to work with individual students and personalize the learning for them early.
Well, that's why one of our greatest recommendations is to, as advanced teaching roles is expanding across the state, to expand apprenticeship alongside of it, because what we're finding is districts that do a strategic staffing model where you have these teacher leaders who are going through, and every student has access to a highly effective educator, so does every teacher have access to a highly effective educator. So pairing these initiatives together, and we're really lucky as North Carolina, a third of our districts are doing ATR. We can be statewide in the next 10 years. And by the way, the goal on apprenticeship is to be at 5,700 teacher apprenticeship positions in the next 10 years. So scaling these up alongside of each other, where it's not just somehow teacher apprenticeship is the panacea, or somehow advanced teaching roles are, or principal fellows, they all have to go hand in hand. So you laid that out perfectly, thank you. hearing what we have, all the, incredible opportunities we have in our state, districts that are willing to try it out, Apprenticeship NC that's willing to work, community college, higher education. And you heard of our goal, ambitious, right? Have you heard any state that said 5,700? So how are we going to get there?
Yeah. Well, there's the African proverb, right? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And so I think there is an incredible amount of innovation that has occurred in North Carolina over the years. I've been a huge fan of Best NC. You have innovative leaders like Dr. Brown and Apprenticeship NC, who I think the world of. Great folks over there. But first, let me issue caution, and then I'll give good news.
Please.
So anytime somebody hears there's a new funding source of money, there's a lot of interesting folks who come out of the woodworks. And so if I was a foundation here today, or if I'm a legislator, you're going to have people say, oh, I've been doing apprenticeships for 20 years. No, you haven't, because it's only been around for 3. And so what's really important is to ask them some critical questions. So I really appreciate Best NC's focus on quality, which is, if you are acting as a teacher of record or a full-time substitute teacher, that's not an apprenticeship. Dr. Brown, you referenced it referencing, I think, in the mentor sense, but an apprentice is somebody learning to do the job, not doing the job. We already know what the results are if someone's thrown into the classroom, and more importantly, what do our kids deserve? That should be the focus of this all. Also, you're seeing a lot of universities just continue to charge the same tuition they always have. They're not changing their programming, not doing anything, still charging $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 per person and calling it an apprenticeship. This is a chance for a state, for the people of North Carolina to say, we can do something better here. We can drive down costs. We can tap into labor dollars. We can identify those individuals who'd be a great teacher if given the opportunity, and we remove those barriers. We just had our national convening 2 weeks ago, our second one, and we'll have our third one in New Orleans, so please, you all are invited. And we released our quality teacher registered apprenticeship agreement that we're having states sign on to say, we're going to agree to this moving forward, because I admire Dr. Brown's work, but it's not easy being a lone innovator and getting, you had a community, but it's so much different. We see this work scale so much faster in other states when you have the state education agency play the role of sponsor so that they can handle all the paperwork and different things like that, especially for the purpose of rural districts and the tinier districts in that space. 3 states that I would just point to that are worth picking and choosing from that might be of interest. North Dakota, so we did the teacher registered apprenticeship. In July of 23, we got the principal occupation approved for registered apprenticeship. And then I've always been a big fan of the ATR work that you all do. I'll be in DC next week as I'm meeting with the US Department of Labor to get a lead teacher occupation approved, which actually would fit right into the incredible innovation that has occurred on the ATR work, in my opinion. So that's really interesting. Arkansas, they actually, as a state education agency, are becoming their own ed prep provider so that they can remove financial barriers and ensure quality control. So we're doing a special education registered apprenticeship with them as the RTI provider, the related technical instruction provider. And they're able to run it at a fraction of the cost that the universities can. And then finally, your neighbors to the north, Virginia, we created their K-12 teacher registered apprenticeship, and now they're doing pre-apprenticeship work because frankly, I'm tired of the thoughts and prayers approach of getting kids excited in high school. And we're best friends with Educators Rising and a lot of teacher cadets and groups like that. They do amazing work. But stop taking the thoughts and prayers approach that when they leave you in high school, they're going to magically be able to navigate financial aid, registering for their courses, and best of all, paying tuition to then work for free during student teaching. Do not lose that leak, stop having your leaky pipelines. Dr. Brown's working way too hard in her district to get these kids excited. You got to finish them through. I love that you have the 1 out of 8. And how do we keep expanding these opportunities for all individuals?
That's very, very helpful. We're going to finish that same question across, and we will be opening up to audience questions. So get your questions set up to go. Dr. Brown, what do you think about that? What is that spurring for you?
He's right. We need the support statewide. I mean, I've read about what's happening in Tennessee. RTI on ERA has provided a lot of information about what's happening across the state. When we first began looking at what needs to happen in our district, we did have virtual meetings with people in Delaware and Texas and other places where people have started it, and they kind of gave us their stories of why it worked and what's working and how sustainability is very difficult. And sometimes that's that one person in that district office trying to make it happen. But in order to meet the needs of our kids, the kids are still coming. The vacancies are still high. And we don't see that changing anytime soon. And we've got to do something different. We can't continue doing the same thing like Dr. Tomerlin talked about, 100 years ago, this is how we pay teachers. We're not doing that in technology. We're using artificial intelligence to make things happen. Students need people that can help them learn how to critically think through this innovative world. And as we use AI, how do I use it? How do I decipher bad information from good information? You have to train people in order for them to do that so they can make a difference and continue to grow. And so we do have to scale this up.
Well, I'm going to shout out to Mark Townley, who was talking about continuous improvement earlier today, and that's what I'm hearing, right? For you to be able to continuously improve, there needs to be kind of a coalition of districts. We do that with advanced teaching roles, right? We're convening districts 3 to 4 times a year, both to bring them in, the early innovators, but bring in those laggers later on, but also that continuous improvement. So I think that's a key point we need to be thinking about, is how are we going to make sure that you're all talking to each other and helping grow each other's work. John, what would you like to add?
No, just to put things in perspective, and David, you mentioned this in your remarks earlier, to let everybody remind us that pre-2020, there really weren't any states doing this. And so here we are, Tennessee put a stake in the ground, other states have followed. Our friends from Arizona have joined on, which is wonderful. But this will, some of these programs do occasionally stumble. We've had some here in the state of North Carolina that haven't quite got off the ground. And so we're working to resuscitate those programs. And we know the reasons why some of these don't work out. And so what I would tell you all is it's one of those things that will build over time. We've got a lot of the right pieces. Brenda, what you and your team have created here that everybody has in their packet is really a fantastic resource and shows you exactly what the roadmap would be. And if anyone who's looking for a living version of this, I'd just point to Charlie Milling, who's here from my team, who is helping folks across the state develop these programs. And so I think we've got a lot of the right pieces. We just have to keep working together and working hard.
Yeah, thank you. And that, as most of our briefs are, pulling everybody together, lots of conversations across the state to figure out sort of where is the energy going, and that will change over time. But one thing I will point out is that you'd mentioned sort of is the associate's degrees, students on the pathway. There are kind of 3 buckets of students. I keep talking about the emergency teachers because that is this emerging crisis that we have. The intention is also for teacher apprenticeship to be used for student teaching. There's almost no internships anymore that go unpaid. And 1 semester, frankly, is not enough. So how do you encourage ed prep programs to have a full year of student teaching and have those students be paid for the work that they're doing in our schools? And then the third category is the pipeline of community college candidates and so on who have maybe they're approaching that associate's degree, give them a year or 2 of experience. So all 3 are outlined in the report, and I think all 3 are really important, but we need to figure it out, right? We have to pilot, we do have a couple of examples of the districts that we're not able to get off the ground, and I think learning from, like you said, we have bad news and good news. Learning from the bad news, learning from mistakes that have already been made is much better, because we'll make plenty of mistakes of our own. I want to open up to questions in the audience. Thanks, John.
Dr. Brown, thank you for being here. How did you recruit your mentors, and how did you then pair up your mentors with your first 7 apprentices?
So we actually talked to our principals, shared with them the expectation and what the on-the-job competencies are. And they had in mind some great people that would be willing to do it who were not already beginning teacher mentors. And we asked the apprentices, who would you feel comfortable working with? Who do you think can guide you in this work? And so we let the principal and the apprentice choose. And we're still, working with that, wanting to give them more support as they go forward.
Are they enrolled in an ed prep program? Are they all sort of taking the same kind of training along the way, or what does that look like?
Are you talking about the apprentices?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so some are enrolled in an EPP. We actually have one apprentice right now. She started this year, but she is actually in her internship. So she did the first semester as the apprentice and continues to be, but now she's in her internship. She kind of got in when she was almost at the end, so to speak. Others are kind of completing their instructional assistant college credit in terms of the associate's degree and completing that so that they will be ready. Like I said, we have one that is a teaching fellow, or two actually. One is also a teaching fellow that will graduate in May and then start the EPP. So currently we only have one that's in an EPP program.
So what funding sources have you been able to utilize? And then Dr. Brown, specifically for you, do you guys have partnerships with certain EPPs, or do your apprentices go to any EPP, and how do you manage that?
Are you my friend from Winston? Yeah. Hey. So we first had funding. We were gifted with a grant. We did write a grant with ERA, and we received $25,000 with that grant, which was great. Our board has supported us in this effort, and so where there are local, state, or federal funds available, then we're using that. We've reached out to Tom Tomberlin. He's kind of guided us in how to go about accessing the teacher apprentice grant program. So we're looking into those that will fall in that pipeline. So moving forward, we are going to continue to tap into that, look at what possible pilot grant funding is going to be out there for us, and just continue in that vein.
Yes, please.
Yeah, if I may. So we've been able to get $28 million just from the USDOL on what's called the SAFE grant, State Apprenticeship Expansion Formula, for 5 states. We've gone 5 for 5, and we're partnering with 7 states this year for SAFE 3. So there's money, for anybody who watches Arrested Development, there's always money in the banana stand. We've also done $93 million in state legislative funding, but we've had to earn that, and so we've written legislation for 9 states and explain, in different priorities, different values in that regard. But the thing that I want to hit on, and I have a slide on it, but please go on our website, things like that. If you even have 1 teacher vacancy, you can start this program. And I'm saying that, and I'm not good with math. I was an English teacher. So average teacher salary, $67,000. That doesn't even include fringe benefits. But because I'm not good with math, let's just say $60,000. If you have a long-term sub in there right now, that's costing you $25 to $30K. That 60 minus 30 is $30,000, and that typically goes to your CF no, and we got to turn him or her into a CF yes. We got to get that $30K to cover 2 people at $15,000 a pop to finish their degree, or 3 people at $10,000 a pop. So even that, you heard me talk about us requiring dual endorsement in special ed or ESL. Yes, it was an issue about addressing our most vulnerable students, but now all of a sudden I could pay for up to 50% of the program with IDA funds if I was requiring special ed dual endorsement, or 50% with Title III funds if I was requiring English as a second language. To our legislators, there's a dirty little secret in education. Come June 30th, we always have to spend down money, otherwise you have to return it. And so we can look at those opportunities there, let alone our Title II funds, our Perkins funding. You got to blend and braid while also negotiating with the universities to drive down costs. And then I might offend some people here, but what you see is what you get. Believe it or not, I believe English 101 is English 101. So why am I paying a 4-year university 10 times the rate when I can go and get it from the community college system, which are great leaders specifically in this state, to get my English 101. Why would I not take advantage of that? And so that we never paid in Tennessee a 4-year university for years 1 and 2. You had to get your associate's or 60 credit equivalency from a community college. I'm a former college dropout who, when I did go back, went to a community college. It changed my life. I have impressive degrees now, but I was the same person then as I am today. And so I'm a big believer in taking advantage of the community college system in this work.
John will kick you back later.
No, simply that in addition to the US DOL SAFE grant, we have our own here in the state. So the North Carolina General Assembly provided some funding here for our own apprenticeship expansion funds, and something that was available really across the board. It was focused on Tier 1 and Tier 2 counties for a specific age group. Really didn't limit us in terms of what industries, but the idea was to get the apprenticeship programs out. And so $2,000 could go towards equipment, could go for uniforms if we're thinking about manufacturing. $2,500 could go towards your community college tuition. And then there's upwards of, I believe it was $18,000 that could be applied to the wages that you earn. And so your employer was suddenly very interested in this program. And we were provided $12.6 million as a part of that program. And within a year and a half, it was fully allocated. And we have about a $10 million wait list now. So that's a program that we'd love to see continue.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Following on your math, because I am a math person. Everybody in here
I think it
knows
added
I'm a
up.
geek. It was great. It was great. The 60,000. Let's also look at that classroom where you talked about emergency sub. Anybody? Boo, right? What if, right? So one thing we've learned in advanced teaching roles is that good teachers are happy to take on more students temporarily for more pay. So what if, while we're breaking that vicious cycle, just that emergency time when we're breaking that vicious cycle, what if we take that vacant classroom, reassign those students to teachers who are willing and capable, and we pay them more out of that other 30,000. And now again, you're cost neutral, you funded the apprenticeship, you've funded the broken cycle. Within a few years, those apprentice teachers are now able to fill that classroom, and that emergency system goes away. I say what if because right now our system does not allow us to trade in positions. So that would be an emergency policy that we would have to put in place to allow for that to happen. We're not allowed to convert those positions to use them in those ways for some very good reasons.
Sure. May I speak to that? Because what I'm about to say is a little ironic. So I don't know, I think he was supposed to be here, but Brian Hassel, Opportunity Culture, Public Impact.
There he is.
So we actually, the first district to become a registered apprenticeship in teaching, Clarksville, Montgomery County Schools, just north of Nashville, had an opportunity culture model that we used as the basis, or part of the basis for this work. So for example, we had, imagine, again, you know I'm bad with math, but even I can do this. 100 kids divided into 5 classrooms, 20 kids a pop. The issue was Clarksville couldn't find that 5th teacher. And so typically in Tennessee, previously, you would just be able to make a request to us at the state to get an emergency hire, and we'd sign off on that. And so what we said was, okay, you can consolidate to 4 classrooms of 25 kids each, but that savings can't just be used, instead of emergency hire, use that money to then pay for folks to finish their degree. The point is, and somebody said it earlier about incremental progress, I don't know when that became a dirty word. We are 100% about incremental progress. Are you better today than you were yesterday? Warren Buffett talks about the best day to invest was yesterday, therefore the second best day is today. We believe that applies to grow your own programs. And so it's ironic that we took something from North Carolina as part of what we came up with. And I would encourage folks to have some flexibility there. Obviously, any policy was created by a man or a woman, therefore any man or woman can change a policy. So I really appreciate Best NC gathering leaders here together to figure out, and what maybe worked so many years ago, times change, how can we use it to do better moving forward?
We didn't have 41% emergency teachers 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? It was half that. So, other questions? Dr. Will?
First of all, David, where have you been the last 2 years of my life? Kind of building the car as we were driving on this, and to tease the session coming up, we have a large part of the solution, including the money, and it's already there. So what I'd like to understand is what, from a federal level, can we use to match some of this to grow and to
Everyone? Woo. You heard it here first.
So I mentioned the SAFE grant as one example, and kudos to John for having a state-based version of that. But you asked federal funding specifically, and so I gave some examples of education funds that are federal, Title II, IDA, all of those. But the other thing I'd really push on, so we recommend that you recruit the cafeteria workers like my mom, you recruit the bus drivers, you recruit parents, guardians, tutors. But once they're in the apprenticeship, leverage the paraprofessional role. The reason I bring that up is paras are typically paid only like $18 to $25K on average. You're getting benefits. My point is they qualify for the Pell Grant. It's amazing how many universities aren't factoring in. So when we work with states across the country, we design the competitive grant. So if a state was even to put $2 million into this, we would say, okay, DPI, we're gonna do 20 grants of $100K each, and it's kind of for real estate people, final or best offer. You get universities to say how many seats for $100K. Universities can win multiple $100,000 grants. I don't care how the sausage is made, but leverage Pell Grant, leverage the Teach Grant. If you've been a parapro for 20 years, shouldn't you get credit for prior learning so I don't need as many credit hours? If I'm doing true on-the-job learning, shouldn't I get a 3-credit class, one of the 3 credits? So those are just some examples of how federal funding with the Pell, the Teach Grant, how are we mixing, braiding, and it's gonna look different in different places, but that would be some of my initial thinking there. I am very optimistic about, everyone's scared of ed and what's going to happen there at a federal level, but on the labor side, I have very little concerns, and I'll be in DC next week meeting with folks on various topics. So,
Dr. Brown, John, what you would like to add?
I just want to encourage the districts that are here, take a leap of faith, connect with your community college, connect with ERA, connect with Mr. Donaldson, connect with Best NC. Don't let anything stop you from doing this. It has really encouraged our teachers to see this happening, our principals as well. We're doing a podcast next week at our district level, and we hope to send that out to our students and to those in our district. It'll be posted on our website. So if you get a chance, go to WayneCountyPublicSchools.org and listen to our podcast in about 2 weeks. And just continue doing the work.
Thank you. John?
I'll just close, maybe not a light close for you, but what I'll say is North Carolina is a great place to do business. And we have seen a variety of industries grow here. We've seen the highest number of new registered small businesses that we've ever seen happen over the last couple of years. New industry coming in. Our state's Economic Development Agency has developed a fantastic reputation, is bringing new businesses in every single day into this state. But what those businesses ask for right away is they want qualified workforce. We know that. They want to know where they're going to house that workforce. And then they want to know that they have the health care and the education for their families to take care of it. Nobody else is working on these things, folks. The folks in this room are. And so this is one of those things that we have to dig in together to solve. I really don't feel like there is a plan B that's as advanced as what we have here. And so we've got to make sure this works.
One last thought.
yeah, I would just say, for those of you who may hear this, it's a myth that nobody wants to be a teacher. We have been able to prove that. People would never would have thought this, but we have wait lists. When you remove those financial barriers, it's amazing what the opportunities create. And I just want to add this in my closing remark, is just to say, the best people to recruit teachers or for apprentices for this program are fellow teachers. They know who they want to be their coworker. They are sick and tired of covering, all the extra prep periods and giving up their prep and all that stuff. So they know who can cut it or not. And also, finally, because my mom, this has nothing to do with education, this is life. Too many people in this country suffer from low self-esteem. And so if you're in your recruitment process, if you say, sign up for here, we'll pay for you to become a teacher, there are so many people that count themselves out before they start. And so we need to institute the TAP. Dr. Brown, as she's looking for classified staff and students, hey, you're a leader, you high school senior. You could be a lawyer, doctor, why are we not saying you could be a teacher? And so let's do the TAP. We'll continue to increase the applicant pool, but they're out there and we have examples everywhere.
I'm going to verify what you just said. Gab told me the other day that Teach NC has 90,000 people registered in that system. When we started, we were just shocked that we had 20,000, but now it's up to 90,000 people who are asking, how do I become a teacher? And we have an amazing woman in here, Glacier Robinson, who used to take those phone calls from candidates, and she took a call from a woman, Shaquanda, who you recall, called her and said, I just don't know if I want to be a teacher, I'm scared. And she said, well, come over and try it on. And she went into Guilford County and was a TA, and within a few months, other teachers knew that she could be a teacher, right? She went through the process. She had all the hurdles you could possibly imagine. Teach NC got her through that. She found a job through the jobs board. She's in her 5th year of teaching, guys.
Wow.
In Pitt County,
Awesome.
middle school science. And she just earned, ECU is granting her a master's degree in mathematics education
That's
for
awesome.
free. I know, Shaquanda, I'm going to send this to you. So these people are out there. They want to be teachers. They want to be good teachers. And so to stick someone in the classroom where they can't be successful is harmful to them. It's harmful to students. And I'm so grateful to all of you for being solutions oriented and all of you for your commitment to fix this and figure this out. We are, I wish we could, I know we had more questions and we'll all be available this afternoon. We have a great breakout session this afternoon. I can't move this forward, oops. Okay, so we are heading to lunch. We are going to be out to the right and then down the stairs to lunch. Immediately after lunch, please be on time. We all learned a lesson last time. We will be going straight from that lunch to breakout sessions, so bring your things with you. These are fantastic breakout sessions. And then we will come back in here for one last conversation with Representative Willis. You got a little taste of his passion for this. Please come back and hear his conversation before we wrap up. So thank you so much, and we'll see you for that great SAS lunch.